Raise your hand if you're alive. I beg to differ. Raise your hand if you're baptized. Okay. So we clearly have a problem here. Because if you are baptized, you actually are dead. This is what St. Paul says in Colossians chapter 3, verse 3. For you have died, and your life is hidden in Christ. In Romans chapter 6, verse 3, he says this, are you unaware that we who have been baptized into Christ Jesus were baptized into his death? In verse 8, if then we have died with Christ, we believe also that we shall live with him. You see, my brothers and sisters, in a very true sense, we've died. We've died in baptism. We've died with Christ. Because if we hope to live with him, we have to die with him. The reason why in baptism we use water, and in the greatest form of baptism would be full submersion. When you think about what full submersion baptism is, you take an individual and you plunge them underwater. What happens to an individual when they're underwater for a really long time? They die. Now, of course, with the practicalities of young children, holding young children underwater doesn't always work very well. And like in the history of the Catholic Church, the necessity of baptism, if you have a child born in the middle of February and there's no heat in a church building and all the holy water fonts are frozen over, if you've ever been to Europe where their churches are still not heated or cooled, and you go to put your hand into the holy water dipper and the water is frozen, fully submerging a child in water makes absolutely no sense and is ludicrous. Or when someone is on their deathbed and they're attached to electrical machines, and if someone insists that someone who's 80 years old that has a deathbed conversion wants to convert, but we must submerge them in water, it's a really stupid idea. So the church, looking often for minimalist attitudes, realizes that just 3 drops of water is all that's necessary. When I baptize an infant child in the NIC unit, they give me literally a sterilized eyedropper and sterilized water, and with rubber gloves, my hands are put into the incubator, and with 3 drops of water, that child is born anew. But that child also dies. Dies to what? To this world? To this world expectations? And my brothers and sisters, we are called to realize that we are not to live for this world. Our first reading today from the book of Sirach says this, remember your last days. Remember death. Remember your last days. Remember death. Some of you know that I have this little fascination of sorts with a Latin phrase, Memento Mori. Memento Mori. Everyone repeat after me, Memento Mori. One more time, Memento Mori. What does the phrase Memento Mori mean? It means to remember death. What does Sirach say today? Remember your last days. Remember death. So, this is my little friend. Some of you know I have multiple of these. This is the one from my office. I have 2 in my house, 1 in my chapel and 1 in my bedroom. The one in my bedroom glows in the dark because I want to remember death when the lights are on and when the lights are off. Why do I have skulls in my office? Why do I have skulls in my chapel? Because Sirach clearly says, remember your last days. The Latin phrase memento mori is from a larger Latin phrase. In the Roman period, when Roman victorious generals would come back from war and they would parade into the city streets of Rome. The streets would line with people, and they would scatter flower petals upon them, and wreaths would be put around their head, and feasts would be celebrated. And the victorious general would be put into a beautiful gold chariot, and a servant would stand behind the general, who would be paraded through the city streets and lauded as almost a god. And the servant standing behind the general would repeat this phrase over and over and over again. Respi poste, hominum te esse memento, memento mori. It translates this: look behind you. Remember that you are a man. Remember death. Look behind you. Remember that you are but a man. Memento mori, remember death. I have a good friend. His name is Jack Beers. Some of you might remember Jack, who has come before and helped give a parish mission through Dynamic Catholic a few years ago at the St. Paul campus. Jack was volunteering as a youth minister at a parish in Kentucky. He was trying to raise up a sense of fervor among his participants. So he made these tiny little tokens, these little coins that had a skull on them and said Memento Mori. And he gave them to the young people in his youth group, and he said, listen, I want you to put this in your pocket, and I want you to remember every single day that one day you're going to die. And how would you live your life today if you knew that today you were going to die? How would you live your life today if you knew that today was your last day? We live in a culture which clearly says that we should focus on perpetual living. We should focus on comfort, on softness, on pleasure, on striving to be young forever, and to never think of death, to never think of suffering, to never think of our end. And yet the reality is memento mori. The reality is, Sirach says, remember death, remember your last days. Many people look at death as a downer. It should be the exact opposite. Remembering death is a great motivator. That we have very little time in our life to do a lot of good. That every single day is an opportunity for us to strive for greatness, to strive for magnanimity, to love, to serve, to forgive, and to change the world. Because every single day is one less day that we have to do God's will. Some of you might know the song, Live Like You're Dying. So I do want to ask the question, how would you live today if you knew that today was absolutely your last day? Husbands, what would you say to your wife today if you knew that today was the last day of your life? Wives, what would you say to your husband if you knew that today was the last day you would see your wife? Children, what would you say to your parents? Parents, what would you say to your children? What would you say to your neighbor today? And what would you say to your enemy? Our gospel passage clearly lays forth a pattern for us of mercy, forgiveness, and unbounded, radical, and unconditional love that we're called to put forth towards those who wrong us, again and again. And if today was your last day, what would you say to your God? Would you spend that 10 minutes in prayer that I challenge you to pray? Would you pray your rosary as I challenge you to pray? Would you go and make a holy hour? Would you go to confession? Would you run to Mass? Would you think of a neighbor who does not know Christ and do all that you can to share the gospel with them? My brothers and sisters, we are called to remember our last days. And I think every day is a beautiful day for us to live like it's our last. To Memento Mori. Right now, our world is terrified and lives in amazing fear. Fear of fires, fear of hurricanes, fear of COVID-19, fear of the future of politics, fear of financial failure, fear of our toxic culture, fear of Black Lives Matter. Christ doesn't want us to live in fear. Christ wants us to live like every day is our last. And abounding mercy and love to say the things that need to be said, to share the things that need to be shared, to be who we're called to be, and nothing less. For those of you who know the 5-second rule, I want to challenge you to live the 5-second rule. Today, tonight, before you go to bed. Shock people in your world and send them a message that they need to hear. Love without abandon. Be the saint that you are called to be, with no reservations. Memento Mori. I will tell you, my brothers and sisters, if you remember death, if you remember your last days, if you memento mori, you will live out your baptismal call. And you will realize that on the day of your baptism, you truly did die. And now you're called to live forever. Because when we die and we enter into eternal life, we live. Cast off the fear of this world and live. Say what you want to say. Be who you're called to be. Because death is no more for us who believe. So today, my brothers and sisters, may we remember death. And may we live forever. Amen.